In 1876, Spanish police arrested a sailor. At least, they thought he was a sailor. The man had shaved his beard, altered his face, and hidden himself among the ordinary crew of a ship docked in Vigo, Spain. He carried no title, no authority, no trace of the immense wealth he once commanded, just a bucket and a deck brush. But this was no ordinary fugitive. Just a few years earlier, this exact man controlled the largest city in America. History remembers him as Boss Tweed, the man who stole New York City. But his true story isn't just about theft. It's about power. Long before he became one of America's most notorious political monsters, William Tweed was just a working-class boy in Manhattan's Lower East Side. His father made chairs, his family scrambled to survive, and by the age of 11, Tweed had already dropped out of school to work the docks. Nothing about his childhood suggested he would someday rule New York. But his rise didn't begin in City Hall. It began in a firehouse. In the mid-1800s, volunteer fire companies weren't just emergency services. They were neighborhood gangs, social clubs, and lethal political launching pads. Rival companies frequently fought each other in the streets, right in front of burning buildings. Tweed thrived in the chaos. He became foreman of the famous Big Six engine company, earning a reputation for brute strength and raw leadership. But more importantly, the firehouse taught him a dark secret about human nature. People follow whoever solves their problems. Power rarely begins with a title. It begins with local trust, and Tweed was becoming a master at earning it. As Tweed entered politics, he focused on a strategy most politicians completely overlooked. He wasn't chasing headlines. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing absolute control. Control over city appointments, control over public contracts, control over every single dollar flowing through New York. And no place offered more raw opportunity than Tammany Hall. Today, Tammany Hall is a historical synonym for corruption, but the reality was far more complicated. For the floods of penniless immigrants arriving in New York, Tammany Hall provided survival when the government offered nothing. It found them jobs, housing, food, and distributed coal during brutal winters. To a struggling family, Tammany Hall wasn't a corrupt political machine. It was a literal lifeline. And that is what made it terrifyingly powerful. Real corruption rarely presents itself as pure evil. The most successful criminal systems survive because they buy loyalty with genuine benefits. Tweed understood that calculus better than anyone. By the late 1860s, he sat silently at the center of a massive web-like network of politicians, contractors, and judges, a flawless machine. That ultimately answered to just one man. Then came the project that would define Boss Tweed's legacy: a courthouse. In 1858, New York approved a new county courthouse with a modest budget of $250,000. What followed became one of the most infamous financial crimes in American history. Suddenly, invoices began appearing for astronomical amounts. Millions for plaster work, thousands for individual thermometers, hundreds of thousands for carpets, and over $1 million for basic plumbing. One contractor received over $100,000 for just 2 days of labor. Checks were written to names that barely sounded real. One massive payment went to a man named Philip Dummy, another to T.C. Cash. The courthouse had become a massive pipeline, moving public tax dollars straight into private pockets. But what makes this theft remarkable is that nobody robbed a bank. Nobody pulled a gun. Nobody cracked a vault. The entire crime happened through paperwork, invoices, contracts, budgets, all hidden behind official stamps and government signatures. This is why Tweed's story still feels so modern. The largest thefts are almost always hidden in plain sight. When finally confronted about the staggering inflation, Tweed reportedly sneered 4 unforgettable words. "What are you going to do about it?" At that moment, he believed he was completely untouchable. And for a long time, he was. Then, someone completely unexpected entered the story. A young political cartoonist named Thomas Nast. Nast wasn't a judge. He wasn't a prosecutor. He held no political office. He was simply an artist. But he understood a critical vulnerability that Tweed completely failed to appreciate. Many of New York's poorest voters couldn't read lengthy newspaper investigations, but they could understand a picture. Week after week, Nast filled the pages of Harper's Weekly with savage cartoons attacking Tweed's corruption. The images spread like wildfire across the country. Suddenly, citizens who had never read a single investigative report were staring directly at Tweed's greed. Slowly, public opinion began to turn. Tweed was furious. According to later accounts, he reportedly raged, "Stop them damn pictures. I don't care so much what the papers write about me. My constituents can't read, but damn it, they can see pictures." The cartoons bypassed literacy. They bypassed political excuses. They communicated straight to the gut. Desperate, Tammany Hall tried to buy Nast's silence. The bribe reportedly climbed to an astronomical $500,000, a fortune that would make him rich for life. Nast refused, and he kept drawing, because Tweed's power depended entirely on his fearsome reputation, and reputation was exactly what Thomas Nast was destroying. While Nast attacked Tweed in public, a fatal threat emerged behind the scenes. Secret financial ledgers from the Tweed ring were leaked directly to the New York Times. For years, the public had suspected corruption. Now, they had cold, undeniable proof. Numbers, documents, evidence. The double blow was devastating. Nast weaponized public outrage, while the newspaper provided the unassailable facts. Together, they shattered the machine. Boss Tweed was arrested, tried, and convicted. The man who once ruled New York was finally behind bars. But the story wasn't over. Even in a cell, Tweed enjoyed luxuries ordinary inmates could only dream of. His power had faded, but his connections remained. And during a supervised visit outside the prison walls, he slipped away. He vanished. Rumors placed him in Havana, London, and Texas. But Tweed was actually on a ship bound for Spain, disguised as a common sailor. The former king of Manhattan was now a fugitive scrubbing decks. And then came the ultimate irony. Spanish authorities recognized him. Not from a mugshot, not from a police wire, but from a Thomas Nast cartoon. The same drawings Tweed had mocked. The same drawings he tried to buy out. The same drawings he thought were just harmless ink. Those drawings brought him home in chains. Boss Tweed is believed to have stolen the equivalent of billions of dollars from the people of New York. He controlled judges, politicians, contracts, elections, entire institutions. For years, he appeared completely unstoppable. But absolute power has a fatal weakness. It depends on people believing it can never be challenged. The real lesson of his life isn't just that Boss Tweed stole New York City. The lesson is that he successfully convinced enough people they needed him to do it. And in the end, the empire he built with billions was utterly destroyed by something money simply couldn't buy: the truth. Today, the courthouse at the center of his greatest scandal still stands in modern Manhattan. It remains a stark reminder that while power can shape history, accountability can outlast power. And sometimes the figures who alter the course of history aren't politicians or generals. Sometimes they're journalists, sometimes they're artists, and sometimes all it takes is a pen.